We continue our Making Sausage candidate series. The big news in northern Minnesota, but on a national scene, is Minnesota's Congressional District 8. DFL Congressman Nolan had a somewhat surprise announcement that he would not be running for re-election, but before that even happened, Republican Pete Stauber declared his candidacy, and he's the endorsed candidate. He grew up in Duluth playing hockey, went on to play on both college and professional levels. He's worked in law enforcement, served as a city councilor in Hermantown, and he's currently serving his second term as St. Louis County Commissioner. And Pete Stauber joins us now on the road visiting county fairs and over in the Bemidji area. Pete, thanks for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Heidi.
You're welcome. So give us an idea of kind of your story. What led you to run for this congressional seat?
Well, so I've got a passion for public service, having spent 23 years as a professional law enforcement officer and my wife 24 years in the military. Our family has, like I say, a passion for public service. And serving 8 years on the Hermantown City Council and now in my second term as county commissioner, it is for me. I love to be able to help people and really do what's right in government, and so far we've been very successful. So this is a passion for me, and I entered this race because at the time, over a year ago, I entered this race, Heidi, and I talked about at the time our current congressman wasn't really supporting our way of life in the Minnesota State Congressional District, and that's why I entered the race.
So how do you think your law enforcement background gives you a different perspective than other candidates might have?
Oh, I think in a number of ways, but I think the biggest way is the opioid crisis we're seeing. We talk about how it's devastating to families and communities. I saw that firsthand as a law enforcement officer. I gave death notifications to unsuspecting parents of children who were involved in drugs and who had tried drugs. It was one of the most hardest things I did as a law enforcement officer was give these notifications. They're not easy. You can't train for them. But just to see the devastation that our opioid crisis has on our families and communities, and it touches almost all families across the 8th District in Minnesota, for that matter. And I think that we need to look at this and put forth prevent measures, put forth treatment measures, and of course make sure that they're prosecuted for these crimes of selling these opioids to our young people. And it's not only our young too. There are old people, older seniors, middle-aged folks that get caught up in this, and their lives are changed too. So I see that firsthand. I'm not just as a candidate. I'm just not talking about it. I've lived it. I've lived the opioid crisis, and I understand firsthand the devastating effects, that it has. It was just a couple of years ago in the city of Duluth. If I may, Heidi, tell you a story that. A father was strung out on heroin in the living room of their residence with the mother and the two daughters crying in the kitchen. And the mother said to me, he was gainfully employed just 6 months ago. That's how addictive these opioids are, and just devastating to see. And I saw this throughout my career over a number of years. So that's just one example of how I think that my law enforcement experience can be brought to Congress and legislate from that what we call that lens that my background, the lens that I have seen.
Not that anyone has easy answers to the opioid epidemic, but do you have thoughts because of that kind of background and on steps, changes that could be made in this Congress or in the whole area in general?
Yeah, I mean, right now President Trump has stated it's a crisis. There are several $1 billion going into going forward to treatment. And what I say is we don't have the solution to this epidemic. This opioid crisis is evolving. There's nobody that has a perfect solution at this point. But we have groups throughout the 8th District and areas of the 8th District we have social workers, and we have school nurses, and we have elected officials, and we have ER doctors that are getting together that in their own local communities are putting forth what they feel is best and are successful. So from that standpoint, Heidi, I think that we have to recognize the hard work and the expertise that they're putting forth in solving the problems, and I want to support them. And eventually I will think that we're going to come to a reasonable prevention approach that might have to be tailored in certain, tailored one way or the other. But like I say, right now it's evolving, and I'm willing to invest in Congress, invest in this crisis to, really prevent it. And I think that prevention is really a big part of it. When people see how devastating it can be, we hope that they wouldn't succumb to any peer pressure as they, mature into adulthood or even as adults.
I want to move into what you probably are asked about all the time: copper nickel mining. And if you win Congressional District 8, you represent miners, you represent business people, you represent environmentalists, and it's not necessarily a black and white issue. But how do you juggle that, jobs versus clean water and all those kinds of things? What do you think? How will you approach it?
Yeah, Heidi, in our 8th congressional district, we could talk about our rich agricultural land and our deeply wooded forests. We are blessed in our 8th congressional district with our God-given natural resources, which contains iron ore and copper nickel. And I believe we can have a strong economy and a clean environment. And when we look at that, we have the best standards, regulatory standards, protecting the environment. I'm very proud of that. The copper nickel industry is going to be using 21st century technology, and they're going to use facts and science in determining if it can be done right. And so far, both the polymet and twin metals are going through that process, and they're meeting or exceeding every regulation that we demand of them. And I do believe very soon we will be mining those precious metals, copper, nickel, and others, and we will do it in a way that will keep our environment pristine and bring about good-paying jobs for not only this region but the Iron Range.
I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what you're hearing from people that you meet, like at the Beltrami County Fair that you were at, and also how maybe, having national attention on this race, having President Trump visit Duluth, how has that affected your campaign as well?
Well, those are great questions. We just came from the Beltrami County Fair. I spent several hours there, and by the way, I was door knocking in Beltrami County today. An enormous day for us, a successful day. But at the fair, people are talking, and I'm hearing this the last year on the trail. They want their safe communities. They want to be able to raise their children in schools that are safe. They want our health care patient-driven and physician-guided, not run by the government. And, they want, in the Minnesota's 8th district, they're predominantly pro-life. You're looking at the lower 60% are pro-life, and the vast majority of our Minnesota 8 residents support our Second Amendment, and that's who I am. And when I see them at the fair and meet and greets, they're just talking about those common sense values that we all share, and they know that, and they trust me that when elected, I will bring those discussions to Congress to better not only the district but the state and the country as well.
District 8 also includes the 5 sovereign nations of Anishinaabe, Ojibwe people. How will you bridge those communities and work with them inside of District 8? Well,
we have to. They are a part of our community, and the Native American history, the culture is rich in Minnesota's 8th district, and for sure we have to work together. And like I say, our commonalities far outweigh our differences. And the Native American community is extremely important in our 8th district, and we will work together with them and come to make some common ground decisions and solutions, because that's the way, when we sit down and have those good, healthy discussions, the end result is positive, and I'm certainly looking forward to that.
That's Republican candidate for Congressional District 8, Pete Stauber. You can find more information at his website. It's PeteStauberForCongress.com. Thanks for taking time for us today.
Thank you, Heidi. Have a good day.
You too.